Welcome to Think Out of the Can, where we take ordinary ingredients and create.
Extraordinary food.
What are we cooking today, Chef Tim?
Well, we're featuring canned potatoes and canned chicken. And we're adding a few other ingredients. We're going to give you 4 recipes that are a little bit more than just dumping the can into the pan.
All right, I'll let you get to it.
Okay. Well, the first thing that I'm going to make is a chicken shepherd's pie. Now, standard shepherd's pie is with ground beef and seasoning and a lot of vegetables. But again, we're working with the canned potatoes and canned chicken. We're going to add some canned carrots and some seasoning and some mashed potatoes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sliced canned carrots. We're going to add cream of mushroom soup. And just out of the can. I'm not adding water, I'm not adding milk to that at all. I'm going to mix that together. Then I'm going to add some seasoning. Now today I'm using a little bit of salt, pepper, and Italian seasoning. But go into your pantry. Whatever seasoning you have. That's the whole point, is you make it flavor and you make it taste the way you like it based on what you have in your pantry. So I'm going to add the seasoning to that. Going to keep mixing. Every time I add an ingredient, I like to mix it together so that it's all melded well together, so the next ingredient that I put in there will do the same thing. Now this is canned chicken. Now we broke it up a little bit. We didn't make it all kinds of small and everything like mushed, but I broke it up just a bit so that it can evenly distribute into the remainder of the ingredients. Again, mixing it all up. So we have ourselves a mixture, once again, of canned carrots, canned chicken, some seasoning, and some cream of chicken soup. I'm going to take this.
Can you use cream of mushroom or some other kind of, what about the seasoning?
Oh, yes.
Can you use other kind of seasonings or just what
Yes.
you chose to do?
Yeah, no, like I said, today I'm using salt, pepper, and Italian seasoning, but if you have Cajun seasoning, if you have just some...
What if I have something besides carrots?
Yeah, if you have canned mixed vegetables.
What about tuna? Would tuna work?
I guess tuna would work also.
Hey, I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, the fact is that we're trying to put a protein and a vegetable together so that you're getting those different, important elements of food. And again, with canned foods, the other thing is, and I didn't mention it, when you have canned vegetables, canned potatoes, you want to make sure that you rinse them very well. So rinse them very well with cold water and then drain them really well so that you get some of the liquid that it's stored in, that you get that out of there and it gives you a more natural flavor. So now everything that I mix together, I'm going to put into a baking dish and I'm going to spread it out evenly. There you go. And then finally, I'm going to put some pre-made mashed potatoes on top because it's not shepherd's pie unless you have it topped with mashed potatoes. Spread them evenly. It takes a little time, but you want to make sure that you get a nice coating there.
And this is only for demo, so when you see that the inside is very shallow, it's only for demo because usually when we make it at home, it's a full dish.
There you go. So that's what it looks like before you put it in the oven. And you bake it at 350 degrees for about 20-25 minutes. You'll see the inside start to bubble, and that's your telltale. Once you see that start to bubble, then you want to turn the oven on to broil so that you get a nice little browning of the mashed potatoes. And there you have it. You have chicken and potato and vegetable shepherd's pie.
And easy as pie. And so we have a life point today. Our life point is God will provide all your needs for His mission, not your mission. That's what we found out as we have been doing the dinner as possible and think out of the can. And the scripture is Philippians 4:19. Our God will provide all your needs according to His glory and riches in Christ Jesus. And, when we started doing all of this, it wasn't because we were thinking that we had it all together. No, in fact, we were going through our own struggles, so that's what made us start doing Dinner is Possible, and Tim will tell you about Dinner is Possible.
Well, Dinner is Possible. We started working with youth and teenagers in the heart of Third Ward, Houston, Texas, which is a rather impoverished area, and so many of the families are on food assistance food. And we just started working with the kids, showing them how they can be creative, because, you know, there's no too early of an age or too early of a time to start getting involved. Now, you know, a lot of families, they have their grandmother or their mom and they say, come on in here and, you know, you stir the pot, and you stir the pot in a good way, not as kids. And so a lot of them learn that way, but a lot of them don't. And so we had a program that, you know, had these kids come in every Monday after school, and we would teach them healthy alternative cooking. And some of the things were like rinsing all of the vegetables that come out of a can, so that this way they get some of the, you know, that liquid out of it, and you get a more natural flavor. But the other thing is that we started doing this years after that in 2020, when I know that all of us remember COVID. And in fact, our business shut down entirely. You know, nobody could assemble in restaurants. You know, as a private chef, you know, people didn't want me to even come into their home because everybody was so fearful of COVID. But by the grace of God, there was a Methodist church, the Covenant
of Faith?
Covenant of Faith, United Methodist Church. Thank you, Pastor Luther and Rudine, that they said, we'll actually video you and put it on YouTube so that we could help people that were getting food assistance food on how to be a little more creative with the food. And let me tell you that when we would drive past the Reliance Center and the Astrodome, and we'd see those feeders lined up as far as you could see with cars of a family, there were many six-digit income families that had to humble themselves and receive food assistance food. So, you know, we wanted to show them that there's ways. You know, I always say, don't look at a can of corn as a can of corn. That's kind of how this whole thing started. So that's kind of the backstory of how we started doing this, and we just feel it's a way that, and this just doesn't have to be food assistance recipients and clients. This is, you know, people that have a lot of canned goods, and it's a way for you to just say, hey, you know, I don't have to just dump it in there and heat it up and put it in a bowl or put it on a plate. So the next one that we're going to do is loaded chicken and potatoes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first take beaten eggs. I'm going to put the eggs into a bowl. Get them all in there. This is kind of interesting. So we use sliced ham. And we're figuring that, you know, most people have sliced turkey, sliced ham, some kind of meat. It can any kind of lunch meat. But if you have some leftover roast, you could chop up the roast. This is just, again, to give you protein. Of course, the eggs have protein, the meat will have protein, and it also have some vegetables in there. So in this case, we had a few slices of ham in our refrigerator. So I'm going to add the ham to the beaten eggs. I'm going to add cheese. Because, hey, cheese makes everything taste good, doesn't it? I'm going to add the cheese to it. And remember that when I put the ingredients in, I like to mix up.
I just wanted to say it smells so good in here.
Thank you. You should come in and enjoy. I'm going to mix everything together, so when I add the next ingredients, which is the seasoning, then it's going to be melded and all nicely mixed together. So I'm using some Cajun seasoning, and you know, we always use a little salt and pepper, because I mean, you know, it's just like life. You have to have a little salt, and the Bible speaks about that all the time. So I'm going to put the seasoning in there, and especially when you add seasoning, you want to make sure that you mix it really well, because sometimes that seasoning just, you know, it sticks to the food ingredients, and unless you mix it all around, it kind of may stay in one or two areas. So I'm going to mix it up really, really good. And can you give me some more cheese? Oh, you got that, okay. Okay, so it's nicely mixed, and I can see that the seasoning is all well blended throughout. And I'm going to add, remember, today's features are canned chicken and canned potatoes. So now I'm adding the canned chicken to it. Same thing, I know I'm repeating myself, but every time you add an ingredient, mix it in so that it's evenly distributed. Okay, that's looking really good. And then I'm going to put in the potatoes. Now, with these potatoes, I'm going to actually layer them.
Now, one of the things that you want to do with all canned goods is you want to rinse them, especially with potatoes. They absorb a lot of water.
Yes, they do.
And so you have to make sure that you dry them, because we've tried frying just like you would a regular potato, everything you would, whether it's frying them, baking them. And so as we've done different things to them, seasoning and then cooking them on the stove, if you don't get all that water, that liquid off, you're going to have spattering, and then you're going to be burnt. So you want to make sure you get that off of there.
So I layered them, so you have a nice little layer. So the bottom is your whole mix of eggs, cheese, seasoning, and ham. Then I put the layer of potatoes, and last but not least, I'm going to...
Just a little bit, because you need that for your next recipe.
Okay. And I'm just going to top it with
You didn't
cheese.
bring enough cheese.
And this is how it looks before it goes into the oven. And I bake almost everything unless it calls for a higher or lower temperature. I bake almost everything at 350. It seems to equally cook everything from the inside and the outside. And so that goes in for about 20-25 minutes. And the finished product is, you see the cheese is nicely melted. And again, your telltale is you're going to start seeing the ingredients underneath the cheese start to bubble up. And pretty much you know that that's going to be hot and ready to eat. And so this is the loaded chicken and potato casserole. And it's really tasty. You think about the fact that ordinarily you would just have the plain potatoes, maybe heat them up, or maybe make chicken salad, which is nothing wrong with that. But we've had a real creative way to add these ingredients and make it something special.
So our next life point is life point number 2, uproot your thinking and put your thoughts in bondage. Romans 12:2, do not be conformed but transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is good, pleasing, and perfect will of God. And for life point number 2, we try to take all of these life points and apply things that happen in our life, because a lot of times when we're going through something, whether we have to be in the food bank line or something like that, we feel like, well, why is God doing this to me? And why am I in this situation? And there's been many a times that we've had those, why God, why, and so one of the things I think talk about when we had given all of our things away and we went to work at a foster home. And in the midst of that, things weren't going too well. And so we found ourselves without a home. And so we ended up losing our jobs, and we were homeless.
For 10 months.
For 10 months. And so during that time, we had to figure out what we were going to do. And as long as we kept focusing on other people, God kept providing. But when we focused on ourselves, He stopped providing. So during that time, Tim being a man, he felt like he had to supply, and be
and provide.
there. And he is an amazing support and amazing man. But sometimes jobs don't turn up, and sometimes God's trying to get you to turn your thinking a different way. And so in all that process, that's one of the things that God was doing. And so talk about the time that we were working at, you
At
went
the
into work
foster
to work at the mansion.
So,
right after your job.
Romans 12:2, it's basically that we're in the world, but we're not of the world. And this is a perfect example, because it was like March of 2011 when we didn't have a place for Dinner is Possible to assemble. And these kids, they really needed this. And we needed it also, because we knew this is how we were supposed to serve. And so God wakes me up one day and I'm making coffee, and He said, I want you to trust me. I want you to stop your catering business, and I'll have you and Kim working with youth full time. Well, we didn't realize it was going to be about 13 or 14 months, but we were obedient. It was getting very difficult, but we wanted to make sure. And sure enough, we got a call to work at a foster home, a 200-acre foster home outside of Houston. And it was going really well. And then just, there were issues. Unfortunately, in a lot of these places, as important as they are and as good as they are, there are some issues. And when they realized that we were very aware of that, they ended up letting us go. And as Kim said, we were homeless. We were homeless for 10 months. But, the fact is that with that period of our time, you learn a lot of humility, you learn how to humble yourselves, and also you find out how beautifully generous a lot of people are, because we had to stay in a lot of people's homes for quite some time. But then going back and working with youth and working with people in challenged situations, we can also say, yes, we do understand because we've been there. And so that kind of tells you that, you know, and it always says if you have a test, it becomes your testimony. And that's one of the number of testimonies that we've had since we have been together. So next in line, chicken and dumplings. Now, I don't care where you come from, even me up in the Northeast when I used to live there, and thank God I've been a Texan for 34 years. But chicken and dumplings it's a standby. Now we've added another ingredient. We've added your basic biscuit dough. And the biscuit dough, you know, you go into that cold section, and so what we've done here.
And it decided to present itself. It
Yes,
popped
it
open.
did. Yes, indeed. You got to make sure you keep those frozen or at least refrigerated for, and if you refrigerate them, only maybe 1 or 2 days, because they decided that they start to proof, and then pop goes the lid. So I've got some ready-made chicken broth. Now, of course, you can get that in the can. Nowadays, you can buy them in a quart of liquid, or you can buy the granules and make your own. If you do make your own, you can't put the granules in until that water is hot, because otherwise they don't blend and they don't become like a soup. So I'm going to heat this up, and as soon as I start to see bubbles, I'm going to take the biscuit dough, and I've cut them into smaller pieces. The recipe says that you take one of the discs and you cut it into quarters. So I'm going to put them in here. And when you put them in, kind of, you know, spread them around so they don't cook together, even though at some point they're going to do that anyway. There you go. This is why I have gloves on. So we're going to get those going. Yep, you see that? There's already 2 of them that decided that they were going to they're going to be they're going to be friends. Now, you don't have to have it boiling the whole time. You want to get it boiling and then kind of keep it on a simmer.
So that's just chicken broth with nothing in it?
No, just
Right now?
it's just chicken broth. Yep. It's just chicken broth. And again, as I see them kind of, you know, come together, I'm going to separate them so they have equal time and space so that they can become dumplings. And basically, it's going to take about maybe 10 minutes for the dough, the biscuit dough, to be fully cooked and not be raw, and they will turn into dumplings.
Well, and the cool thing is also you can cut these up and you can do them like a donut. So you can put powdered sugar, or you can do cinnamon sugar. You just fry them in oil. They're actually very good.
See, you can tell the Kims from the South. You know, I still got some learning to do, even after 34 years. So these are looking pretty good. And for the sake of time, I'm going to move ahead, because they'll still continue to cook. Now I'm going to take cream of chicken soup. And again, we're not adding water or milk like you would if you're going to just make this soup. I'm going to add it because the water's already in here. I just want to thicken the chicken broth.
And boy, he made this last night to try as a sample, and he said, is it creamier or is it thinner? And so I was telling him what I thought, and when he got done, I had that for dinner. It was really good.
So I'm going to mix this around. Once again, I want to make sure that it's evenly distributed so that the cream of chicken soup will meld in there and it'll look nice and smooth and velvety. And it takes a little bit.
Tell you though, you don't want to eat these recipes right now, because we don't measure everything, and it doesn't always taste good. Every time we do a cooking class, somebody says, oh, can I try that? I thought, no, because it has too much salt or too much.
So this is the consistency of the soup. You don't want it any thicker, you don't want it any thinner. Now I'm going to add the canned carrots.
And those were sliced, but you sliced them.
Yeah, I chopped them up a
Chop
little
more.
bit so that, you know, everything is a mouthful. Everything is a bite, if you will. And again, you know what I say, you're going to mix up the ingredients. This time I added poultry seasoning because this is chicken and dumplings. So I thought poultry seasoning would be, the perfect amount. I don't need to add any salt and pepper in this one. You can if you want. It's up to you, because the cream of chicken soup and the chicken broth, I think they have a decent salty flavor. The last thing I want to put in is the chicken, because I don't want the chicken to cook to the point where it just becomes all separated. So I'm going to add that in the very end. And at that point, I don't really need to cook it because it's nice and hot. And I'll tell you what, if it was close to lunchtime, I'd be chowing down on this. So that's what it looks like in the pan. And do we have a sample?
Right here.
Oh, okay. Here, you can just pour that. Yep, just pour it all in there. Because this is what I made a little earlier for samples. You see, now we got enough for some of those hardworking volunteers at the Eckhart Food Pantry. We want to do a big shout out to Pastor Jason and the First Baptist Church of Elkhart and what they do every single month for the community in distributing food at the food pantry. So, once again, that is what it looks like. It is tasty, and this is not supposed to be chefy. I should have said that in the beginning. None of these recipes are supposed to be chefy. Yes, I'm a chef, and yes, I have a chef coat. These are things you can do at home. I used poultry seasoning, but again, go into your pantry and just find some kind of flavor. You might have garlic powder. You might have basil or oregano, some dry seasonings. You just add something so it embellishes the flavor of the basic ingredients that you have. And that is chicken and dumplings.
So we're up to our life point number 3. If God cared, why would he let me go through hardships? Romans 8:28, we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God and who are called according to his purpose. And in our life, again, I think part of the reason why God has us go through things is because he wants to show how strong he is through us. And a lot of times if we focus on, like we said earlier, if we focus on our problems, they're only going to get bigger. But if you focus on how you can help someone, and hence this is how this whole program started, is because we focused on how can we help somebody? How can we get our eye off the fact that during COVID no one was working? What are you going to do? Sit and cry and pout? No, you have to focus on what can you do. And we've done a lot of things. When we were working with the youth in our Dinner is Possible program, one of the things they did say is that, I have nothing to give. And guess what came to Houston? Extreme Home Makeover. And guess who went and worked on the home? And guess who felt satisfied? We took the youth that we worked with to the home, and they got to build the home for a neighbor, and it was really cool. They got to serve the family their first meal in their home. And so to watch all of these, people that feel like, well, I don't have anything to give, but we all do. I mean, it could be a smile. It could be a hug. It could be, physically doing something at a food bank, or like we're doing a cooking class. We all have gifts and talents that God's just waiting to grow and to have us and put us in the game, Coach. So that's really what this whole thing is about.
It really is very well put. So we have one more recipe, and this is we're making chicken cakes. You've heard of crab cakes. You've heard of salmon cakes. Well, we're taking the canned chicken, and I have to tell you, this recipe came from when we had Dinner is Possible at James Ryan Middle School in the heart of 3rd Ward, Houston, Texas, and we put the kids into a challenge. We put out the food bank food for them, and there were no recipes. They came in and were like, why is this set up differently, Chef Tim and Miss Kim? And we didn't say anything other than, and I went like this, and I said, today you have a challenge. And the challenge is to be as creative as you can with the food bank food that has been distributed to your class. And ready? On the count of 3, go. 1, 2, 3. Create! And these kids went out and they made some really creative foods with Vienna sausage and so on. But they made chicken cakes. We didn't tell them anything. They made chicken cakes, and man, they were good. So, chicken cakes. I've got the canned chicken again. I'm going to add some breadcrumbs. And I'm going to save some of the breadcrumbs till the end so that we can coat them. I'm going to add egg,
And yes, the kids created this.
The kids, I was
I was like, how did you come up with that?
I was
Genius.
I was blown away. These kids, it was their first year in middle school, so they were 10, 11 years old when they came up with this. So again, I'm making sure that I mix everything. I keep telling you, every time you add an ingredient, mix it well. I'm going to add today, so Kim decided, now I've never had chicken cakes or any kind of cakes with taco seasoning, but she said, hey, Chef Tim, let's do some taco seasoning. So I said, that's fine with me. You know, I mean, let's face it, anything that tastes like Mexican food or Hispanic
Yes.
food, let's go for it. So that's what your chicken cakes are going to be like today. But once again, and I'm going to say this with every recipe, that you go into your pantry. If you have garlic seasoning, if you have dry basil, if you have dried thyme, taste it and add it incrementally and then keep tasting so you know, that tastes good. And then maybe it needs a little of this or a little of that, because once you put too much in, you can't take it out. So add it incrementally and taste incrementally, and by the time you're ready to cook it, whether you bake it, fry it, or cook it in a saucepan, then you're going to have something that you already know is going to taste great.
Well, and I can say my cooking's improved as I've worked with Tim, and the thing that he's done or helps me do is that when he makes certain dishes, that he always says, make it like I do it. And I've listened in these cooking classes, make it like I do it, and then add the seasoning you want. And so what makes it great is because as you start cooking, you're like, hey, well, this would taste good if I did this, and pretty soon you've got an amazing dish that you didn't even know you could figure out for yourself. For sure.
When I teach cooking classes, and I've done that for years, I would always tell them that. I'd say, now go home and cook it exactly the way you did today. Did you like how it tasted? And they always say, yeah, it tasted great. That wasn't me. They're the ones that did it, but they're tried and true recipes. I said, once that you do that, then you can decide, do you want to add a little jalapeno? Do you want to, add at that point you can do it, but try the recipes exactly the way they're written the first time, because they work. And can you get me some oil, please?
I might put
Somebody asked, I missed the beginning.
We're doing a second class in a minute, but
Oh,
we'll
okay,
do
okay.
we'll finish this. This is chicken cakes.
Chicken cakes.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
So you get
That's
to hear
good,
the
that's
whole spiel again.
So I'm just putting regular oil, and I think that this month, I think today, everybody got a quart size or 30-ounce bottle of oil. So whether it's vegetable oil or canola oil, if you have olive oil, just understand that it's going to take on the flavor of olive oil, which is not bad. But if you have canola oil or vegetable oil or even grapeseed oil, something that has no flavor, then the entire flavor is going to be in the cake itself or whatever you're cooking.
And you can also use tuna or salmon, canned tuna.
And
The sky's the limit.
the other thing is, you want to make sure that you see the oil starting to bubble before you put anything in there. If the oil is not hot enough, then whatever you're cooking in the oil is going to absorb the oil and it's going to taste oily. And so that's another thing that's really, really important is, make sure you start. My recipes say heat the oil over medium-high heat until it starts to bubble. And you can see that. And just cook it in the oil. And it usually takes about, again, these don't take long to cook thoroughly, so it usually takes about maybe 3 minutes on either side. And if you're not quite sure if they're completely done in the middle, then throw it in the oven for about 10 minutes. It's not going to overcook. It's not going to, burn. It'll just make sure that the inside temperature is nice and hot and ready for you. And then at that point, whether you use tartar sauce or cocktail sauce or just lemon, I personally, I think that just having lemon on it is great. So you can see that that's really beautifully browned.
That's good.
Same thing, 2-3 minutes. That's all it takes. And then, do you have the sample? These cooking shows, they always have the sample out there, and so they're the cakes. And again, this is with chicken. But if you have tuna, if you have canned salmon, just be creative. The whole thing again. This is not to be chefy. This is so that you have some recipes that are a little different than just taking something out of the can and putting it in a pan. That's what it is. And so you can see, I mean, it's done. Now, how long did it take me to do that? You know, about 5 minutes to mix everything.
Nice. And that's using your canned chicken?
Yep, using the canned chicken.
And next month will be lentils and cabbage.
And we saw that we came in today and we saw that there's a whole bunch of heads of cabbage. There's one of the things that we're going to be doing, this is just letting the cat out of the bag, or the cabbage out of the bag, is, and Kim made it for the first time, not me. She made cabbage steak. And so you take the whole head of cabbage and you cut about inch thick, and you know, just you oil it lightly and season it lightly, and you put it in that oven. I'll tell you something. You feel like you ate a steak.